Hey everybody, it's Mom of Two, Wife of One, and welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel, depending on if you're new here. So, as I explained or announced a couple weeks ago, I'm starting a new series on this channel called Pages to Screen, and it's where I'm going to read books that have been turned into movies, and I'm going to dissect the book and really get into, if I like it, if I don't like it, character development, the flow of the story, and compare the book to the movie and then make my final recommendation on which one I think is better. I got this idea because I really love reading. I also really love watching movies. And I watched something called at the end of the year. There are a lot of tributes to people who have passed away. And on CBS, they do something called Hail and Farewell. And I like it because they talk not just about celebrities, but they talk about kind of, I won't say random people, but obscure people that you would necessarily think about. And one year in 2020, they talked about this guy, Winston Groom, and he was one responsible for writing the book Forrest Gump. Until I watched this, I had no idea that Forrest Gump was a book. I know the movie came out, I believe, in 1994, and I remember loving the movie. And anytime it comes on TV, I will stop and watch it because it's so quotable, it's so good. You're constantly rooting for Forrest to really, find his true love with Jenny, to make his mama proud, and just to be a happy person. And so to find out it was a book, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if anyone else knows it's a book. Hence, Pages to Screen was born. So in this video, I am going to talk about the book, give my honest opinion about the book, talk about the characters in it, the flow of the story, a synopsis of what happens in this book, and then in the next video, I'm going to compare it to the movie, what was different, what was the same, and then tell you guys my honest opinion on which one I think is done better. A lot of times the movie it kind of fails in comparison to the book. That kind of happens throughout history. But I'm realizing that it depends on what you saw or read first. Because Forrest Gump came out so long ago, and because I've seen it so many times, reading this book, even though it came out years before the movie, all I kept thinking was, no, this is wrong. Forrest wouldn't do that. Lieutenant Dan wouldn't say that. But technically, this is the original. So technically, anything that Forrest says, Lieutenant Dan or whatever, this is the original, and then they'll make the movie wrong. But I can't live in a world where Forrest Gump the movie is wrong. It just doesn't sit well with me. So I've realized in doing this that the next time I do this with another book, and I've already had the next book picked out, and I'll tell you guys at the end of next episode what that book is, I need to now pick books for movies either I have not seen or have only seen maybe once or twice. Forrest Gump I've seen a lot of times, so I'm very familiar with the characters. I'm very familiar with the turn of events. And so, that's just kind of where we are. So, Forrest Gump, as you can see, was written by Winston Groom, who I already said passed away in 2020. This was not his first book. This book actually came out in 1986. And also, unbeknownst to me, this book has a sequel. It's called Gump and Co. And the sequel came out after the movie came out. So what this author did is he wrote this book, and then obviously screenwriters, took it, chopped it up, did what they wanted to do with it, and came out with the movie. And then after the movie came out, the author was like, you know what, I'm going to write another book, a sequel, where it's kind of showing the aftermath of what happened in the movie. Now, the problem with doing that, though, is a lot of the things that happen in the movie, or at least the way they finagled some of the events that happened in the movie, didn't happen in the original book. So the fact that he wrote a sequel based off of the movie as opposed to this book means there's probably going to be some discontinuation. There's not going to be a lot of continuity. That's what I want to say. There's not going to be a lot of continuity in the sequel. So I don't think I'm going to read the sequel. But I will say when this book came out, it sold 30,000 copies. And in 1986, I'm not sure if that's a lot or a little. I want to say it's probably mildly successful. Then obviously after the movie came out, it sold about 1 million copies because everybody wanted to get their hands on this. I haven't heard about anyone actually reading it. I don't know anyone personally that's read it who can say if they actually liked it or not. But I did want to read the back of it. 6'6", 242 pounds, and possessed of a scant IQ of 70, Forrest Gump is the lovable, surprisingly savvy hero of this classic comic tale. His early life may seem inauspicious, but when the University of Alabama's football team drafts Forrest and makes him a star, it sets him on an unbelievable path that will transform him from Vietnam hero to world-class ping pong player, from wrestler to entrepreneur. Now Forrest is telling all in a madcap romp through 3 decades of American history. Now, even from the first line of this, 6'6", 242 pounds, Obviously, Tom Hanks does not fit that build. And from what I read just now, the author, when he wrote this and they contacted him, said we want to make a movie about this, he envisioned John Goodman playing the role of Forrest Gump because John Goodman is a big dude. And so I don't know. The movie obviously would have been a lot different if John Goodman had played Forrest Gump. Obviously, I think Tom Hanks did a fantastic job. But because Forrest is described as this really big, bulking guy, a lot of the things that happen in this book are because of his size, the sheer just look of him. So the fact that he didn't have that in the movie is kind of interesting. And I think that's why they changed some of the things they did to make it make more sense for Forrest to do some of the things that he did. So one of the things I will say about this book is it's written not in first person. Well, let me look. It's written almost like Forrest Gump's journal. So it's not really first person, it's almost a disassociated voice explaining what Forrest is thinking. Because Forrest only has an IQ of 70, because he's from the South, because it's trying to indicate that he's not that educated, the way it's written is in broken English and in misspelled words and fragmented sentences, and it's very hard to get through for me. And I think it's because I'm a writer and I'm an editor. So anytime I see misspelled words, it's just like, and especially in the book. So I understand, but I feel like, again, if you're not used to that, it makes it very difficult because that's throughout the entirety of the book. And I wish I could pinpoint a certain part where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful. But it's kind of, I can't even pinpoint a certain thing. But I will tell you guys, I did my research. I don't know if you can see that I took notes throughout this book because there were so many things that I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I don't understand. Took notes and all that stuff. But yeah, so the writing itself may be a little difficult for you to get through for anybody. For me, it was a little bit of a struggle. Let's talk about the events that happened in this book. So in the movie, obviously it starts with Forrest sitting on a park bench talking to another person waiting for the bus, and he's talking about his life, right? He talks about how his spine, I believe, had a curve in it, and he had to wear his special shoes. His mom called them his magic shoes. That doesn't happen in this book. And we all know the scene of Forrest in these special shoes with his friend Jenny, and he's running away because these bullies are running after him, and the shoes break, and it's all dramatic, and she's like, run, Forrest, run. We all know this line. We all know this scene because it has the swell of music that's supposed to be so inspiring, like, yes, Forrest, you're running. And, it's supposed to be symbolic of, he's running into his future, or he's running into the next phase of his life, or whatever. That scene is not in the book at all. So it's like, okay, that's different. And even the idea of him running and realizing how fast he was, obviously in the movies because he was running away from people. And in the book, he kind of has moments where he's running away from people as well. But what happened in the book is that he does have a scene when he's running away from some bullies, but this doesn't happen until high school. It doesn't happen when he's a little boy. And in the midst of him running away, the football coach does see him. And it's like, oh, okay, we need to get him on our team. So that kind of starts the whole series of events. But before that, in the movie, Forrest gets on the bus and he's sitting next to Jenny, and that's how he meets her, right? Well, first of all, in the book, she has a last name. It's Curran, Curran, or Curran. So she does have a last name in the book. But in the movie, we also know the scene where they test his IQ. They see that it's a little on the lower side. And the principal of the school, the principal of the public school, is trying to convince Forrest's mother to send Forrest to a special school for kids who may not be as bright. And we know that, she didn't want that to happen. So she did what she thought she should as a mother. And she slept with the principal to make sure her Forrest could stay in a quote unquote regular school. Now in the book, again, that scene does not happen. So in the book, after they test his IQ when he's 6, he is sent to a special school in the book. And he's describing all these other kids that may be worse off than he is, that don't seem as intelligent. He talks about the things that he learned. But he's in this quote unquote special school from about 2nd grade to about 9th or 10th grade. So it makes a big difference in the development of this character of Forrest. Forrest in the book does understand that he may not be as smart as everybody else, but I feel like he's a lot more self-deprecating in the book than he was in the movie. He didn't constantly call himself dumb or constantly call himself stupid. In the book, it feels like he does that often, not just because other people are calling him that. It's like he's already resigned to the fact that, yes, I know I'm stupid, I know I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. And it's like, again, because I've seen the movie so many times, in my mind, that's the right version and this is the wrong version. So I'm trying to stop doing that. But Forrest in the book, he is very much understands who he is, doesn't apologize for it at all, obviously. But again, I will say, if you're like me and you've seen the movie a lot of times and you have an idea in your head of who Forrest is, how he talks to people, his personality, get that all out of your head if you choose to read this book. Because the Forrest in this book, he curses, he uses the N word pretty frequently whenever he's around Black people. And obviously, he is a white man who lives in Alabama. So in this, what, the 50s or the 60s. So it's like, okay, I get it. I understand. But in the movie, he was made to be like this guy who just did not see color, who didn't understand why people weren't treated fairly. He was just all about living his life. Let's everybody get along. Let's all do what we need to do and let's all go home. That was his personality. And the one in this book, he seems to kind of go with the flow of the energy around him. So it's like, yeah, these are N words. And why am I, and not just N word in terms of this is what they are and I've accepted that's just what we call them, but he had the anger behind it as well. You know what I mean? That, they had and probably still have in some parts of the South. Just an anger towards people who look different than you, and anger towards Black people. And as a result of him being that person and having that mentality, I don't want to jump ahead into characters, but obviously we know in the movie that Bubba is a Black person. In the movie, Bubba is not. I mean, the book, Bubba is not Black. So that threw me off as well. Like, okay, very different. So I will say that the movie is very fantastical in a lot of things that Forrest Gump does. We see him as the Vietnam War vet. He's this amazing ping pong player. He has the, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, and it's big and amazing and wonderful. And he's a football star. In the book, he does all of that, but he does a lot more that you're like, huh. And this book, mind you, is less than 300 pages, which if you're not an avid reader, that may seem like a lot of pages, but I read a lot. So 288 pages, I think, is not that long. So in that short space of time, Forrest Gump did all of those things, but he also was a wrestler for a period of time. He was an astronaut for NASA, and he did something else. And I was like, what? He not only was he an astronaut for NASA. There's a scene in this book where the spaceship crashes. First of all, he's on this spaceship or rocket ship or whatever with a woman astronaut and also an ape or orangutan who's a boy. For whatever reason, the name is Sue. Doesn't make any sense. They crash on this island that's full of cannibals. And to stop themselves from getting killed, they basically are turned into slaves and they have to pick cotton. I was like, this make me uncomfortable. Okay. And then the guy who's in charge of the cannibals is this guy who's really from the UK. I don't know how he got to the island. He teaches Forrest how to play chess. So he becomes kind of a chess master as well, Forrest Gump. So he has multiple lives in this book. Oh, and also he becomes a musician. He learns how to play the harmonica. He joins Jenny's band and he's like performing with her and they could possibly have a record deal. And it's like, and I feel like the movie, I now understand why they did this. I feel like for the screenwriter, they read the book. Again, 288 pages is not a lot. So they probably read it and was like, that's a lot of lives for one person to lead. If we turn this into a movie and stay true to the book, people are not going to believe that one person was able to do all of this. Even though it is over a span of decades, it's still like, no, that's going to be a little too much. So I'm glad that they didn't include as much in the movie because for the book, for it not to be that big, it's a lot, I think. I think the pacing is slow in a lot of places. There are some scenes that should have been a lot shorter than they actually were. Again, him, and not only using the N word, but he uses a couple different racial slurs when he's in Vietnam. And it goes more into detail about him playing football. And I believe originally they wanted him to be the quarterback because he's so big, and they make a lot of references to his size and how because of his size he was able to really delve into a lot of different avenues, and that's a lot of these doors were open for him because of his size. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And it's he has a lot more friends in the book. And at the end of the book, when his shrimp business becomes so incredibly successful, he hires back all of the people you've met throughout the book. I did like that part because it seemed like a nice way to kind of wrap everything up. And I would have been fine if the book had ended there, because it's like, oh, great. So everything is coming full circle. Everybody he met in the army, when he was playing football, when he was a wrestler, when he was an astronaut, like just different connections he made throughout his life, they all ended up working for him once the shrimp business became as popular as it was. And I liked that. I thought it was a great way to kind of wrap things up, but the story didn't end there, and I would have really preferred it if it had. One thing I don't like about Forrest's personality, I feel like, and I don't say correct me if I'm wrong, my interpretation of Forrest Gump is that intellectually, no, he is not that smart, but I feel like he still had more common sense than a lot of other people. And in this book, I feel like there were too many times when that common sense, well, actually, no, I'll backtrack. There were a lot of times when his common sense really prevailed, and it showed that, oh, he's not quote unquote stupid. I don't like using that word, but he's not quote unquote dumb. But I think there were too many other times where his common sense didn't really prevail, and it kind of took him out of character, or took me out of the book a little bit. Like, wait a minute, but he would have done this, or he would have said this. So that kind of threw me off a little bit. I did not care for what they did with some of the characters in the book. All the characters from the movie that we know and we love, who were really critical in Forrest's life, like Bubba, Lieutenant Dan, Jenny, his mother, all of them are in this book, right? And some of them have the same fate as they did in the movie. Bubba does die in Vietnam in the book. Lieutenant Dan does lose his legs. But again, as the screenwriter of the movie, they changed a lot of the personality of the characters, including Forrest as well. Forrest in the movie is someone you want to root for. He is sweet, he is innocent, he is very clear about, I love my mother, I love Jenny, Bubba's my best friend, Lieutenant Dan, I look up to him, I just want to do my thing and live a good life. That's pretty much it, not overly complicated. But in the book, there's times when he's kind of a-hole. And it's like, I'm not even rooting for Forrest as a character. I don't care if he ever gets with Jenny. Like, this makes no sense whatsoever. It was just kind of weird. And then also, Forrest in the book is a lot more sexualized than in the movie. I always got the impression that he slept with Jenny. That was like the first woman he's ever slept with. That's not the case in the book, which also threw me completely off guard. Like, what? Are you kidding me? What? I'm so confused. And I know I said that in the second video I was going to go more into the movie and compare it to this. And trust me, there's still a lot more that I can compare. So I'm actually going to stop there mentioning the movie. I'm trying to mention it again. So the rest of this video, I'm trying to keep the videos kind of short too. So we'll see. But I will say, for the book overall, even outside of what it was based on and what it turned into later, just the book by itself, if out of 5 stars, I would probably give it a 2. The pacing wasn't that great. It was very difficult to read at times. Obviously, having a character that is racist in some ways and just use a lot of profanity, and just the audacity of him sometimes, like the male audacity. I don't want to see this character be so, not cocky, but just kind of privileged. And again, though, I guess I shouldn't be, I guess that is how he is. He was a privileged white man. So, of course, he just assumed some things were going to happen, assumed some things were going to, go his way. So I guess I really should be upset about that. But it still is hard to read a little bit. but especially the way it was written. The way it was written was very, very hard to get through, because for this book to be so small, a book this size, I can normally read in maybe 5 days if I'm taking breaks. If I'm just reading straight through and it's keeping my attention, I could read a book this size in about 2 or 3 days. It took me about 2 weeks to get through it because I did not want to go back to it. It was very difficult to read. The pacing, again, was slow in some parts, and I thought a lot of stuff just could have been taken out. And I, for one, just did not see it as a really good book. And then I looked up the sequel to this book, and the sequel sounds even worse. It's, apparently written the same way with the broken English, and the way the author explained why he wrote it this way, because I had to read up on that. He said he writes it this way to, let me see. The text purposely contains grammar and spelling mistakes in order to indicate the character's deficient education and cognitive difficulties. So it's like, okay, I get it, but I feel like that could have been portrayed in the dialogue between Forrest and other characters. And that's the other thing, because his mind works that way, or he writes this way, or whatever. I understand if that's what you're trying to portray. I definitely get that. But the book is probably 70 to 85% of Forrest's words and not his dialogue. Even when he's around other people, a lot of times he's explaining what the person said and explaining his reaction to it or the way he interpreted what they said, as opposed to having actual dialogue. So it would have helped to have that dialogue to kind of break up this language, which again was difficult to get through. So that's probably my major critique of the book. I just was not a fan of it. It took me a lot longer to read than it should have. So my final rating for this book is I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. So obviously you guys can read it if you need to. It was a New York Times bestseller. I feel like that happened after the movie came out, and that's fine. If you're interested in reading this book, please comment below. Comment below if you do read it so we can discuss it, because there were so many things in here that I thought was just like, what are you doing? I don't understand. This makes no sense. Are you kidding me? And again, I wrote a lot of notes like, what? Excuse me? So I'm going to end this video here, but the next video will probably be posted next Tuesday. And again, I'm going to talk about the characters in the book and how they compare to the characters in the movie, because they are wildly different. And also talk about some other things in the book that were scenes that I was just so confused about, or scenes that you would not believe, and you're probably very grateful that they weren't in the movie. So we'll talk about that next week. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. And again, if you have read the book, or if you plan to read the book, comment below. We can have a full-on discussion about the book if you guys want to. I can come up with discussion questions. You can come up with discussion questions, and we can talk about this together. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next week for the second part of this video. And again, the second video, I will tell you guys the next book that I'm reading, and feel free to read along with me. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.